See, this is what happens when Gaslight Gatekeep Girl Boss doesn't work, because no one messes with Godzilla and lives. I joke. Or do I? Hello everyone, I'm Max Adam and welcome back. Apologies if I sound a little bit different. It is because I am currently battling a massive head cold at the moment, and I did not want to take a week off and deny you that sweet, sweet video goodness that is the Kaiju content we produce here. So, if you enjoy, don't forget to subscribe for more. Every like and subscribe is one less day of this head cold I have to battle. So, Tiamat. The violent murderess of a Kaiju. Slayer of the rival, the Kong that actually took Godzilla's lair in the inner earth away from him when he was a much younger juvenile Godzilla, and has basically tried stalking and trying to claim Godzilla's territory after he'd already basically claimed them. A lot of people really keep trying to hype her up as this big super powerful like next apex titan, and then she kind of got absolutely throttled both times the two of them fought. Once of them by Godzilla literally yelling at her to go the frick away. So is she really all of that? Will she ever actually return, as there is something to talk about that? And, most importantly, is she truly a copy of Manda? First, the Manda business. Now, while it is true that Tiamat's design was actually heavily revised to actually resemble Manda for Godzilla Kong the New Empire, her original design was actually a lot more distinct, really more of like a giant draconian sea horse, more than like the basic sea noodle we kind of got with her in the movie. However, Manda was basically just a glorified cameo in almost every single incarnation of that character in the Godzilla movies. They were their own separate movie entity before being subsumed into Godzilla, where again, realistically was more of just a glorified cameos now and again, as opposed to something like Godzilla and as opposed to Mothra and Rodan, where they were incorporated into the Godzilla series as their own distinct characters, not just they're there, remember we made this character. Plus, there's really only so many ways you can make a literal sea noodle before people will start saying, oh, it's the same thing. It's like, they're both sea noodles, yes, comparisons are going to be drawn, but just because two things are sea noodles does not mean one is a copy of the other. Even though, yes, I think the original design was better, and they probably just made her design more similar to Manda for simplicity of animations. Which I think is dumb. But as for her power set and abilities, because there really isn't much to talk about in terms of her sort of history and lore in the Monsterverse, because she really hasn't been in that many things. She was in Godzilla Dominion, and she was in Godzilla Kong the New Empire, with a brief mention in Godzilla King of the Monsters. But again, both times she fought Godzilla, Godzilla kind of wiped the floor with her. Now she did put up a little bit of a fight against both times, but most of that is kind of Godzilla is shown to deliberately not try to game end almost any kaiju he fights. The only times that he goes out of his way to not hold back, the fight's over pretty quick. The only times it wasn't was the Mutos, and that's because the Mutos were naturally evolved to counter his species. Whereas with Tiamat, he kind of doesn't want to end other titans because, again, all the titans are an important part of the Earth's ecosystem. So if he takes out one of them, that is going to have adverse effects on Earth. So why would he be going for the throat and bloodlust when his whole goal is preserving balance on Earth? When they are trying to actively dethrone him. He only uses game ending as an absolute last resort. I see a lot of people talking about this in terms of Godzilla's strength and the tail slap game ending the male Muto in Godzilla 2014, and the head stomp destroying the Muto Prime. And people saying that, oh, well, Tiamat was able to survive a tail smack from Godzilla and repeated stomps when those ended previous ones. First off, the male Muto is a lot smaller. The male Muto is tiny comparatively to something like Tiamat. The other thing is, it's a flyer. Flyers kind of don't need to be as heavily armored in order to, fly. They rely on speed and agility as opposed to actual durability. Also, if you actually watch that scene from Godzilla 2014 when Godzilla smacks the male Muto into the building with his tail smack, it is not the impact of the tail smack that is the fatal blow. It is that when Godzilla slams the male Muto into the skyscraper, or the giant hotel, but whatever the building is, it is the building itself impaling the male Muto that finishes it off. If you actually look, and it gets a bit hard to see because the lighting in Godzilla 2014 isn't really the best, you can see pieces of the building going through its body. Now, yeah, the impact would have done a lot of damage to it internally, but it was also the literal impalement with extreme prejudice that really put the nails in the coffin for the male Muto. And Muto Prime, yeah, the face stomp crushed that thing. Because in both of those instances, Godzilla was actively trying to put them down. With Tiamat, he wasn't trying to. That's the reason why in Godzilla Kong the New Empire, when they fought, he was having none of it. He tried to brush past Tiamat, get to her lair so he could absorb power to go face Shimo and Scar King, but when he realized, okay, Tiamat's not gonna let me get past this without a fight, he decided it's not worth it trying to basically reason with her again. You're not worth my time. I don't have time for this. It was basically a case of, I am not gonna be bothered with trying to deal with you anymore because you don't listen. This is why you don't disrespect Godzilla. This is what happens. I mean, yeah, they kind of hype her up a lot, but it's like, no, it was nothing. She could not take Godzilla in an actual fight, and it's kind of hilariously outclassed. So I see people bringing that up a lot. They kind of leave out that Godzilla does actively hold back in fighting against other kaiju. And I think a large part of it is, in the story, they kind of hype Tiamat up, which gets into something. I think they had a lot more plans for Tiamat that they didn't go forward with, and they were like really building Tiamat up as this big, new boss monster. Not quite a King Ghidorah level threat, but something more along the lines of maybe she could be a future single movie enemy for Godzilla to fight. But maybe they decided, okay, we're going to go with more of these King Kong, Godzilla team-up movies, and Tiamat doesn't really have a place in that because she would be more of a singular Godzilla enemy, because, both amphibious kaiju can fight on the land, can fight in the water. That's not something King Kong could really help with, so they probably just decided, well, we might as well just get rid of her then, and that's kind of where the unceremonious game end came in my opinion. But we will be talking about how she probably is going to be affecting the future of the Monsterverse with the zombie revival. Alright, we'll be getting into that later. That's kind of its own separate whole can of worms. Or I guess Tiamat's in this case. But there are also a lot of inconsistencies with her power set. Namely, them classifying her as bio-ultraviolet, and then later bio-electric. So they've generally been very consistent about these whole bio effects of kaiju. Radon is bio-volcanic, Godzilla is bio-atomic. They're very good about this sort of consistency in their bio-ability names. So the fact that they have switched from bio-ultraviolet and bio-electric is kind of telling. Going along with this whole bioelectric capability, she has a corrosive ink spray that she can basically spit out from her mouth, kind of like a squid, which is toxic as well as acidic and can conduct electricity as well as blind opponents. She's got a little bit of King Cobra in her. It is capable of actually temporarily blinding Godzilla. Useful actually for offense and defense in some ways. Another ability she possesses is hydrokinesis. In a sort of similar manner to the way Ghidorah can create storms, she can create underwater whirlpools, essentially. Now, the way in which this can be done is somewhat inconsistently shown to actual control over water itself, like a waterbender, which is really not probably the way it probably is, to really the ability to swim around in circles to create massive whirlpools. Either way, she does have the ability to create water spouts as well, but this seems more to be correlated with her ability to swim at extreme speeds and her more adapted to aquatic combat nature than actual true-to-form water manipulation. She also has the ability to create, essentially, electrical discharges. So she's kind of a hybrid of a whole bunch of different aquatic creatures. Sea snakes, seahorses, and now electric eels, which is actually a pretty neat idea. You generally don't see a lot of aquatic creatures having electrical capabilities, especially ones capable of, well, creating a massive steam plume visible from space. She also has a mimicry ability, a vocal mimicry ability, capable of copying the sounds of other titans as well as humans, but she can't actually speak, which is a pretty neat concept. Perhaps that is one of the reasons why she is so territorial, able to mimic other creatures, draw them out, and ambush them. Which would further suggest that she's not actually that skilled or that powerful in open fighting. She needs to rely on ambush tactics and her speed. As for her weaknesses, while she is capable of fighting on land, she is not as adept at it in somewhat of an inversion. Actually, well, not really an inversion of Godzilla. Godzilla is actually very skilled at fighting in water and on land. We just see him fight a lot more on land because most kaiju are land-based in those movies. But her ability to fight in the water is also not absolute, as Godzilla was able to outfight her underwater. Again, both times he really didn't want to have to go for the lethal option. It's just in Godzilla and Godzilla Kong the New Empire, he had enough, and was easily able to be dispatched by the atomic breath, slicing and dicing her into several giant meaty chunks. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that she really isn't as powerful as is kind of hyped up, and you'd think from, this giant serpentine creature named for a literal dragon god. She is kind of a little underwhelming. However, all of that pales before one very interesting and unique ability she possesses, or rather her cells do. The ability to seemingly reverse death. Now, the panels shown in the Monarch comics show that the rate of cellular decay is at 0, which that would mean that none of the cells are decaying. We also know that the Titans have significantly enhanced healing factors. We also know that Tiamat's den contained a lot of energy and a lot of radiation, which is why Godzilla went there to absorb even more power at a very, very quick rate. This could mean that Tiamat's body holds a lot more power than most of us anticipated, and this could essentially be almost a battery jump starter to defibrillate kaiju and allow them to regenerate, because if decay is stopped and enough energy is provided, conceivably they could regenerate their entire bodies. Now, this opens the door to zombie kaiju, which could open the door to a return of King Ghidorah, which could open the door to the return of Tiamat entirely, because again, all the whole body parts were kind of in a closed space, and it's not like the whole thing was completely incinerated. We also never did find out what happened to the flesh that was on the skull of Kevin. I think it might be a long shot, but it also is a potential idea too. They have this ability in story. They did hype Tiamat up quite a lot, and she's just kind of unceremoniously game-ended. A lot like the line in King of the Monsters about Ghidorah being an alien, it's a bit weird that they bring up these kind of big, nebulous, overly sweeping things that can literally rewrite a lot of things in the Monsterverse, which honestly is not really a retcon, because it's something they literally put in a new thing that says, yeah, no, this is the case of a thing of a newly introduced monster, or just, this is elaboration on something that isn't retconning things, but it allows them to do more things with pre-existing monsters that we just didn't think of before. Again, maybe they're not going to bring back Ghidorah. Maybe they're messing around with the Tiamat blood and some Ghidorah cells get thrown in and it makes, a hybrid super kaiju, which I think would be pretty awesome. But I do think that Tiamat was hyped up for a lot of reasons, and I think that they are going to be doing more with her, even if she is presently 17 miles under the ocean, presently game-ended. Either way, we're going to have to wait and see. That is kind of really all. Apologies that this video is both a bit shorter than usual and a little bit more rambly than usual. Again, head cold. That's kind of why I wanted to make this video this week and not the Muto video, because that is one that I have a lot to talk about, and I would kind of like to save that for when I am actually thinking coherently again. So I will see you guys next time. Don't forget to subscribe for more, leave a like on the video, And yeah, I'll see you then.